Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers. Because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD and working on a product to help people overcome these problems because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Deborah Zelinsky, and I'm an optometrist who founded the Mind-Eye Institute in the northern suburbs of Chicago. The purpose of the Mind-Eye Institute is to connect optometry with neuroscience because the neuroscience discoveries keep enhancing brain function, and the eye is actually an entry into the brain. The retina is an actual piece of the brain. The 2020 eye examination is fantastic for the general public, but for those with any sort of brain injury, it's not enough. There's more testing needed. At the Mind-Eye Institute, we've patented some unique tests to assess peripheral eyesight and eye-ear connections. And we're going to be talking to you in this podcast about how those testing and the different kinds of eyeglasses can take away symptoms from people who've had brain injuries, concussions, strokes, or help people build their brains when they need skills for learning problems and dyslexia. Please tune into this podcast. Thank you for your time.
Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
go above and beyond.
They become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
with Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast and the Good Question Podcast. My guest is Deborah Zelinsky. She's a optometrist. She's done a lot of work in what's called retinal processing and neuro-optometric or optometric rehabilitation. She's the executive director of research for the Mind-Eye Institute. She had a discovery of how lens stimulation of light on the retina can alter sound perception, which sounds very interesting. So I wanted to talk to her today about her work and research. So welcome, Deborah.
Thank you, Richard. Nice to be here.
Yeah, if you would tell me a bit about your background first and how you came to be an optometrist and discover what you discovered.
Well, my background is in math. I majored in statistics in college, so I was looking for a career that used mathematical formulas and math puzzles. Somebody asked me what I was interested in, and I said math, puzzles, and blindness. And so they said, well, did you ever consider being an eye doctor? And I hadn't, so I spent 2 years in college visiting eye doctors' offices, and I visited a lot of ophthalmology offices and a lot of optometry offices. Found that the ophthalmologists were doing surgery and working with bloody eyeballs and curing diseases, and the optometrists were doing math puzzles and just using numbers, not dealing with the bloody eyes. So,
what do you mean the optometrists are doing math puzzles? What do you mean?
Well, all the lenses they were using, it's all numbers. They're measuring numbers. They're saying which is better, 1 or 2, and I put lens number 1 on lens number 2, and it turns out you're 3 units nearsighted or 5 units farsighted. So it was all measurements of numbers and how the numbers are linked with the spatial judgments around you. So that was all mathematically based. You're magnifying, you're minifying with glasses, which then shifts the spatial perception. So if something's more magnified on one side and less magnified on another, there's going to be a skew in how you see things. So you're going to then twist your body to match the skew and lean a different way. So I just found optometry more fascinating than ophthalmology, and I went to optometry.
No, I've been wearing glasses for like 40 years, and when you find a good optometrist, you want to stick with them. I had one guy that was just amazing, and ever since then he's now retired. But the good ones make glasses. You put them on, you can see great.
The bad ones, you put glasses on, you don't see well, and they're like, oh, you'll just get used to it over a week. And of course you don't, and then you don't want to wear them. So I guess before we dive into the specifics of what you've learned, why does this happen? Why are some optometrists just no good at what they do, and they just blame it on, oh, yeah, I have to get used to the glasses?
Well, I don't know that I would say optometrists are no good at what they do, because I think every optometrist goes into school wanting to help people. So that's...
Well, I'm saying I've seen a difference. In some, they just make that excuse, and others, you put the glasses on, everything looks great right away. Why do you think that those two experiences happen? Maybe it's just me. I don't know.
Well, some people are just testing the right and left eyes separately and not necessarily looking at how the two visual circuits blend together. And others are looking at how the circuits blend together, but not necessarily looking at posture. And then some others still are looking at the posture and the circuitry, but not how people perceive what they're interested in. So if somebody's interested in looking around, they're going to need different glasses than somebody who's always in their head imagining things. So sometimes I think people just aren't taking the full picture.
What's missing in a typical exam that you've discovered is important?
Well, the inside. So like just what you said, sometimes you put glasses on and it'll feel weird. Or if you were to put my glasses on, you might feel bad and uncomfortable. So everybody knows that if you put the wrong glasses on, it feels bad on the inside. And you put the right glasses on and you can see on the outside. What people don't realize is that sometimes, even if you see terrific on the outside, you can still put glasses on to make the inside more comfortable. So we'll take people with, say, bipolar disorders, learning problems, attention problems, who see great, but we'll put glasses on to make everything more comfortable. So I think what people are missing is the comfort aspect, because they're too hung up on the eyesight aspect.
Well, all right. And so comfort, I mean, if you're not comfortable, then how are you supposed to see properly? So how do these two work together, comfort and ability to see?
The glasses, if you do it right, then the glasses should be comfortable and allow you to see, but not necessarily allow you to see really far away. Depends what you're doing when you scan. So I guess we should go back to the beginning, what your eyes are actually used for. They're used to see clearly straight ahead, but that's the slowest part. And then there's a peripheral part to scan so that you know where to aim and focus your attention. And there's a relationship between the peripheral and the central. Then in addition to that, the peripheral part of your eye is also used to look for threats if anything's going to happen around you. So if something suddenly moves, it'll catch your attention. Or if you're walking and there's a hole beneath you or a curb, the peripheral part of the eyesight is turned on all the time to scan subconsciously and protect you from threats. So if that's not working right, then, or if it becomes conscious like it would after a brain injury, then you can have a problem, because then so much of your attention is used to look out for threats, you're not also able to scan comfortably and aim. So those are all on the outside, the scanning, the threat perception, and the seeing details clearly. Then you have your posture, which is affected by different glasses. And then you have all the other connections to the eyes that people aren't used to. So that would include like visualizing in your head and planning and thinking and predicting.
How does this translate to the eye exam? Like, what would you ask people that, I'm sure they probably have no answers for you at first. Like, I've never been asked a single question like what you're talking about. All they do is this better or is this better? Number one or two? One or two? That's it.
Well, that's what we're taught in school. That's classic optometry. Then there's neuro-optometry. Then there's visual development, and then we have mind-eye testing. So as the research, what mind-eye is doing is connecting optometry with neuroscience and trying to pull optometry along and advance it, so that as the new research keeps showing what the retinal processing is attached to, that more and more people will alter their eye exams for brain-challenged people. So in other words, the 20/20 eye exam that was invented in the 1800s is perfect, and it's withheld the test of time, but it's not good for people whose brains aren't working right. So
what does that mean, brain? Like when you go to an eye doctor, how do you know that your brain?
Well, people that had a brain injury, people who've had some inflammation, a lot of times now people who've had COVID, people who have learning problems where their brain hasn't fully developed, people with genetic disorders, autonomic dysfunctions. So there's a lot of people whose bodies or their brains aren't working properly, and they need more testing. the regular eye exam is just fine for the general person. So like what you were saying, the eye exam's fine for you, but it's not going to be fine for somebody, who was in a car accident or,
Well, actually, then not fine because lately, the glasses I'm being, offered are just no good. So what would be the next step? What would be done if, someone's getting eye exams and the glasses are just crap and they say just get used to it and it's not working? What would be like a step towards getting a better exam that, includes more data?
Well, there's a lot of things. Like I said, there's different levels of examination. So one next step would be to test your peripheral eyesight outside of the instrument. Usually they put an instrument in front of your face where, it blocks off the peripheral eyesight and you're just looking straight ahead down a little hole. And so if they take that instrument away from your face and test you in free space, you'll get a better pair of glasses because you won't have that blockage. It's like, in other words, you'll measure a certain prescription when the periphery is covered. But then when the periphery is not covered and there's a lot of space, a lot of information pouring in at you, you'll need a different prescription sometimes.
Oh, interesting.
That'd be one step. A different step is if you have some sort of scoliosis or posture problem or your hips lean forward, a sway in your back, and you have a job that requires movement. So somebody has to do extra testing to assess that. And then another step is what we do at Mind Eye. We have patented testing to assess how you hear sounds. So if I were to clink a wine glass behind you, you would visualize where that wine glass is. And if the person who were clinking it were walking around, your mind could visualize the space. So sounds are linked with visualization and visual imagery. And when you put different glasses on, it alters the perception of where the sound is coming from. So another step would be to give you glasses where those balanced, but that's the outside. And then you'd have to, again, go back to what we said earlier with comfort. So we'd have to make you comfortable on the inside and balanced on the outside.
Before we continue, I've been personally funding the Finding Genius podcast for 4.5 years now, which has led to 2,700 plus interviews of clinicians, researchers, scientists, CEOs, and other amazing people who are working to advance science and improve our lives and our world. Even though this podcast gets 100,000 plus downloads a month, we need your help to reach hundreds of thousands more worldwide. Please visit findinggeniuspodcast.com and click on Support Us. We have 3 levels of membership from $10 to $49 a month, including perks such as the ability to see ahead in our interview calendar and ask questions of upcoming guests, transcripts of podcasts you're interested in, the ability to request specific topics or guests, and more. Visit findinggeniuspodcast.com and click Support Us today. Now back to the show.
What about the optical centers where someone looks through the glasses? Like I've seen some people, they'll look through the bottom of the glasses, like the glasses sit high up, others like the center, others the top of the glasses.
Mm-hmm.
How does that play in?
Well, glasses are cut so that you're supposed to look straight through the optical center. And if you don't, if the glasses slide down their nose, or they're tilting forward, then you're not looking through the optical center. You're getting a prism induced. And that will make the magnification of space different. So it'll force you to tip your chin a different direction. So you're not perceiving the way that the optometrist intended you to.
Okay. Have you dealt with Irlen syndrome? Where people would have different colored glasses to help resolve depth perception and dyslexia problems?
I have. I've actually worked with the Navy on that. Years ago, the Navy was afraid we were going to have a draft. And when the Gulf War came, and I got called in as a consultant to work with, it's called Mears-Irlen syndrome, because Mears was the one who discovered it. Irlen's the one who marketed it. But so the answer is yes, I've worked with them. The money for the funding of that project ended up being diverted for the war. So we didn't finish it. It got finished many years later, but it was fascinating. The colors, so when you put different colors on, it does have an effect. But the Irlen lenses themselves, in the centers that you go to, they pretty much tell you get anybody's prescription, and then we'll look at the colors and see which one will help you. Whereas what we're doing is we look at colors as one way to activate your retina, but the lenses and prisms and filters are a different way. So you got to put everything together.
Are there any common elements that appear in glasses that are counterproductive, like prisms? If you have an astigmatism or the high index, refraction for people that would normally wear Coke bottles, and you want them thinner. auto tint, those kinds of things, any of them get in the way of a good prescription and being able to see properly?
No, because, well, but you're lumping things together. So when you're saying prisms, I always say prisms are like shoes. So are you talking about prisms that are like army boots or prisms that are like 3-inch spiked heels? Because they're real different. Some prisms are designed to shift your shoulders. Some are designed to shift your center of gravity in your hips. Some prisms are designed to change where your eyes are pointing. And some are designed to activate spots on your retina, which trigger brain pathways. So any single piece of what you mentioned can be bothersome to a patient, but the same pieces can be helpful to patients. So each person has to be taken on an individual basis and prescribed for what they need.
How do you find someone that's more than just your standard optometrist? Because I haven't been to a million of them, but I've been to probably 6, 7 at least in my life, maybe 10. And not once have I heard any of the things you're talking about. Like, are you considered a special designation, or how is someone listening if they're not able to work with you, for instance? How would they find someone that does what you do, or at least part of it?
Well, they would call up our office, and we have people that we have 5 levels of certification here, and it takes over a year to be certified. But there's other people in different parts of the world and different parts of this country who've worked and got 1 level of certification that we do joint work with. So they should just call our office and see how we could help them.
Is there a name for a higher level optometrist that at least does some of the things that you guys do? Or you won't find it? You'll have to just blindly search. It's pun intended, otherwise.
That's funny. There's a visual development specialist, and there's an organization called COVD, which was renamed, but it's College of Optometrists and Vision Development. It's a 75-year-old organization whose name is so similar to COVID that it's renamed, but nobody can remember the reasons. So you have to look under covd.org. There are neuro-optometrists, so it would be under noravisionrehab.org. That would be NORA Vision Rehab. And so those are the 2 main groups, but neither of those groups don't do the auditory processing.
Okay. What about when, this happened to me the past year? I'm looking at my phone and I go, oh no, I move it closer, I move it further away. Oh shit, I probably need bifocals, progressives. What's the story around that? Because I tried them and I hated them. Peripherally, it doesn't seem to support your vision. You got to look at this narrow column, and then you got to look down to read, and they just were like a nightmare. So what have you seen that can help people that need that?
Well, you need to go to somebody who uses multiple types of progressives, because there's, I think, 30 or 35 different types. So if the one you tried isn't helpful because the corridor was too skinny, then there's wide corridor ones. And if those couldn't help you, then there's some that have gradations. I think there's some with 5 gradations, some with 11 gradations. So you have to figure out what's easiest for you to tolerate. It goes back to being individualizing each prescription. But even what you're asking, it's still all about seeing. And what we do at Mind Eye is all about what's internal as well as seeing. You have to go one more step. Basically, the eye is connected to 3 different kinds of things. And just one of the things is eyesight, which is what you're asking about. But another thing it's connected to is posture. And a whole other thing it's connected to is metabolism and blood pressure and appetite, all kinds of things. So if you only use the eyesight part, you're missing something.
Yeah, but most people, they go to an optometrist to see. So how do these other issues come up, and, how do they play into all this?
Well, that's a great segue into what the purpose of Mind Eye Institute is, because I want to advance optometry so everybody eventually does this. I want to educate the policymakers so that they can put insurance codes onto connections from the optic nerve to metabolism and the optic nerve to posture, because we find a lot of problems with that, and there's no special insurance codes. You have to educate the public so that they know there's something different. You have to educate the practitioners so they know there's more to learn about brain function. It's not just about eyes. I mean, the actual retina is a piece of your brain. It's an extension of brain tissue, and it's like a patchwork quilt with different sections. So when the light comes in, we have the ability as optometrists to bend the light and hit different sections, which is different parts of your brain. And so the optometrists have to be educated, the practitioners have to be educated to know that there's a commonality amongst us, public and the policymakers. I belong to a society for brain mapping and therapeutics, which is based in Los Angeles. And we have many different types of practitioners, neurosurgeons, physical therapists, occupational therapists, cardiac specialists, and we work with the central nervous system. And there's a lot of cross-pollination amongst us. So everybody in that society clearly knows that eyeglasses make a difference for mental health. Eyeglasses make a difference for posture. It's fun to be united and having a variety of practitioners all together.
Okay, so what kind of issues people have that would tell them they need to see you at the Mind Eye Institute or they need to go there?
There's a lot of different kinds of issues. People have, I work with legally blind patients who've lost some parts of their eyesight. I work with people who've had brain inflammation. I've worked with people, many, many, many people who've had car accidents or bike accidents or head trauma, been hit in the head by a blunt object or blast injuries. So something that shakes up the brain and the brain pathways need to be rebuilt, or children with learning problems who haven't yet developed skills, but they're in school. So the demand of the teachers and the school is higher than what they can handle. So those are the people that would want to come here.
Okay, so what kind of results have you been able to get? Any, samples of like testimonials or interesting situations you helped to resolve, what the cause was?
Yeah, we have a whole slew of success stories videotaped on our website, mindeye.com. But one that I can give you a few examples in particular. Like I've had children who come in and they've been to the regular eye doctors who ask, do you see double? No. Do you see blurry? No. But we will ask them, do you see the words floating off the page? And they'll be, they float up a lot. And when I'm looking at small letters, they float up more. And I have to look away and close my eyes. And they're seeing almost like a wave because each word they point at pulls upward toward them. So a lot of people aren't looking or asking about floating letters. And children, if they've never experienced any other way of seeing, they think it's normal. So we have a lot of children who have floating words. The Ghost in My Brain is a book that Clark Elliott, who's an AI professor in Chicago, wrote about his car accident. He had a little fender bender and he was rear-ended and it disrupted his brain. And we used glasses on him that were for eye-ear connections, and that helped him tremendously. So he wrote...
What does that mean, eye-ear connections? What is that?
It's how his eyes and ears were disconnected. That's actually the common thread in a lot of our patients because the newer research shows that the auditory processing and the visual processing should be linked together, but it's disrupted in neurodegenerative diseases, some mental health diseases, learning problems. And there's big studies from Vanderbilt showing with autism that they're finding that autistic children cannot actually watch and listen at the same time, because the stream of auditory input and visual input is out of sync with each other.
And how do glasses affect how you hear? What's an example?
One example is how the retina, the glasses that you put on, shine light on the retina. Then the retina sends signals to the optic nerve, and then the optic nerve goes to a whole bunch of places in the brain, one of which links with the signals from the auditory coming in. It's a spatial map, how you make a map in your mind.
Right, but what does that look like in terms of glasses? So if you see someone has that disconnect, how will the glasses be different?
Because the traditional glasses like you're describing are to see 20/20 straight ahead clearly, and the glasses we give are dealing with the 20/20, but it's also dealing with the peripheral eyesight. So we're prescribing glasses for peripheral eyesight and posture, and the classic exam is prescribing glasses for the center part of the eye. We're prescribing for the peripheral part of the eye. So the glasses look similar. You wouldn't see the difference. If you had two people standing next to each other, the glasses themselves would look the same. But
but what's in the glasses that's different? You could say.
Yeah, it's a lens that's individually designed to activate the peripheral part of your eye instead of the center part of your eye.
Oh, so light will fall on, let's say, certain parts of the retina preferentially.
Yeah.
So that affects, how people see.
Yes, exactly. You said that way better than I could. Yeah. So,
No
your prescription is different, but my prescription is different from your mother's prescription. So, what's the difference between those glasses? Well, each person sat down in a chair and you found the best prescription to make them see clearly. And what we're doing is looking for the best prescription to make them be comfortable. So people who come in with migraine headaches and neck tension and stomach aches, they don't care that they can see an eagle's eye 30 feet away. If I could make their eyesight just a smidgen less, but they could be comfortable, no migraines, no stomach aches, no neck aches, they're happy.
So let's say, I don't know, I have a dowager's hump and I have like forward head carry.
Mm-hmm.
What is something that you would do to my glasses to help me to, to see better or feel better?
Well, I would probably do two things. One would be to give you glasses to have you lean backwards a little bit differently. But the second would be refer you also to another practitioner who could work with your posture concurrently with what I'm doing. Because the glasses are only doing stuff on the outside. They're changing the way the environment looks. And then your brain has to go the rest of the way. So you need somebody to work with the posture while glasses are working with the environmental changes. And then you need a third aspect of, now that you have a different environment coming in, the space around you see differently, you have to also learn how to use the new space. So there's activities that we prescribe to build visual skills.
So if I have a pair of glasses where I have to kind of like tilt my head back a little bit in order to see properly, that's going to affect my posture over time. For instance, like, is there an outside to inside reinforcement?
I don't know what you mean outside to inside reinforcement.
Well, the glasses being outside. So because of the way the glasses are, if I have to kind of tilt my head or look up a bit more than I normally would look up, it'll eventually, I guess, affect my posture.
Yes, exactly.
Because I'll look different.
Yeah, but there's also ways you can counteract that in a pair of glasses when you're prescribing. That's where Prisms come in. Or you can magnify one lens a little more than the other to shift where the space goes, left or right. So for instance, let's say you're a bank teller and you have to be standing and looking down all day long, then there are ways you can put glasses on where everything appears to be higher up, and then you don't have to lean your chin down all day long.
Okay.
So sometimes we'll give occupational type glasses, specially designed for patients. And a lot of times we'll have 2 or 3 different pairs of glasses because people have different occupations. I mean, you don't have one pair of shoes that you wear to go dancing and play tennis and go to the beach. People have a lot of different pairs of shoes because they use their feet a lot of different ways. So I don't understand why people have just one pair of glasses that they expect to do everything. So we'll often give somebody glasses if they're going to study and do heavy-duty studying, which might be different than if they're on a computer all day, which is different than if they drive for a living. So they might have 2 pairs going back and forth, or sometimes a third one. If you're recovering from a brain injury, the shift of one to another is helpful.
What about people that, like, I've had eye tests and they say like, oh, one eye has a different level of astigmatism than the other, or one, it appears the muscles are weaker. What do you do there? Can you rebalance the effort that both eyes put forth to help you see better?
Well, you could, but the problem is that your eyes are just sitting there waiting for your brain to tell them what to do. So it's really not the muscle being weaker. It's the brain not paying attention to that muscle. It's the same as you have 2 hands, but if one of your hand has been writing for 40 years and the other one has just been hanging on your side, the muscles in one arm won't be as strong. So it's a learned skill. But as far as what to do, when you say astigmatism, again, astigmatism is something that sharpens the central eyesight, but distorts the periphery, and it affects your shoulders. So there's so much other stuff to look at. And you can't just say, you have a lot of astigmatism in one eye compared to the other eye. You have to say, well, why? When you were born, you didn't have it. When you were developing, you did have astigmatism, but nobody bothered putting astigmatism on a 3 or 4 month old baby while they were developing. They waited till you're school age and said, oh, you have astigmatism, so let's correct it. But we look for the cause because astigmatism is just a measure of stress. And it can shrink later as you go. So we have a lot of people with high astigmatisms that come down, 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 down as they get better and better, and they're not needing the astigmatism as a crutch anymore. They're able to.
I mean, like, even in an adult, you can cause astigmatism to go away?
Not to go away, but to lessen. Sure. I mean, I worked with legally blind people, and we had people who had lazy eyes their whole lives, and then they would have damage to their good eye, and the lazy eye would just pick up and their brain would rewire everything. So, yeah.
Very interesting.
But it's not your eye, it's your brain.
I see what you mean. So where are you located and where can you help people? Anywhere in the U.S. or just local to you?
Well, we have people from around the world coming here. We're in the suburbs of Chicago. We're just a little bit north of Chicago, and we have people coming from, as far as South Africa. Last week, we had 2 from Australia. We've had from Tokyo in Europe, and then from all over the United States.
So, I mean, when people want to come to you, what do they want? Like, what problems do they have that they want help with? What do they tell you?
There's a wide range. A lot of people have some sort of injury from, as I said, bike accidents, car accidents. We have a bunch of people from Amsterdam that have had bicycle accidents. Many people have learning problems. A lot of people have genetic disorders. You get a lot of autistic patients because autism is a very fancy way to say that children cannot engage in the environment because the signaling is just not comfortable. They can't process the signals, so they just go into their own world. Genetic mutations. We have a lot of long COVID patients who can't get rid of their symptoms, those types of problems.
What if I tell you, like, hey, I'm not happy with the optometrist I've been to. I want to come to you. I want to see better than I've ever seen in my life. What would you say to that?
You want to see sharper than you've ever seen in your life? Then you're not for us, because our goal is to make your brain work well. And if you see sharply, that means you zoom your attention almost on a pinpoint focus straight ahead, and you're not even using your peripheral eyesight.
Well, what would be things then? What would people tell you? I can't see peripherally what's going on. I have tunnel vision. Like, what would you help with?
Before my accident, I used to be able to think, and now I can't multitask. Before my accident, I was an avid reader. Now I'm exhausted after a half page of reading. Before my accident, I was able to dance and turn around and do twists and turns, and now I get dizzy from just standing up. Before my accident, I used to be able to drive hundreds of miles all over the place in all kinds of weather. Now, if I turn the windshield wipers on, I get into a panic mode. Before my accident, I could comprehend anything people told me. Now, when people are talking to me too long, I have to tune them out because I can't function. I never had headaches before. My neck is always in a spasm. I look at a computer screen and 3 minutes into it, I've got a massive headache, those types of things. A lot of the long COVID patients have light sensitivity. That's a really big complaint here. That it used to be that they could walk outside with no sunglasses. Now, the minute the light's on, they're cringing and they have to be in the dark. And some people,
well, now that you mentioned this, a few things, I'm not trying to make it about me, but I get very tired reading and never used to, so I listen to things instead. And long distance driving, it's like a fight to stay awake. Even when I slap myself, I can't stay awake. Yeah. So I guess those kinds of things probably would be more amenable to what you do.
Yeah, that would be completely. If you called me and said, I want the sharpest eyesight possible, I'd say go to your nearest optometrist, because that's what they're taught to do. And that's what I was taught to do until I started researching and developing more and more things that would make people more comfortable.
So what kind of feedback do you get when you dial in the glasses the right way? What is someone, what are like the good things they say about it? How do they describe the benefit?
I'm back to me. I wasn't myself. I lost myself, and now I'm me again. That's what people say. They're going back to who they were.
But do they talk about how they see? I mean, some people got to say something like that, right?
Yeah, it's more comfortable to see. We have people who are aware of more. We have them both aware of sounds and sights. So we had one lady, and she came back and she said when she's driving, she's now aware of all the cars around her. When she parks, she can parallel park now. She can fit in her driveway without having to it was easy to do instead of having to figure it out. So that we hear people saying how effortless it is to do what used to require effort. And even with sounds, I've had street performers who have different glasses, and they say they can hear nuances in the songs. Ever since they got the new glasses, they can listen better to small things. And we have a campaign called Leave 2020 in the 20th Century. And what we want to do is say, keep 2020 if you're a typical regular patient, but when you don't function regularly, like an autonomic dysfunction or COVID or something where you have lingering symptoms in your body, then you need more testing than just plain eyesight. Those are the people that have to be assessed a different way. I mean, there's a lot of visual systems, and people are just testing the eyesight and eye health and eye movement, but there's more. When I went to the NIH in Washington, and I said, where do I fit in? I would like a grant for research. This was maybe 20 years ago. They said, the National Eye Institute, you're an eye doctor. And then the Eye Institute said, but you're doing listening ability. You should go with the Deaf and Communications Institute. And I went there and they said, no, you're dealing with brain function. You need to go to the Brain Institute. And there wasn't a place that would integrate everything. So that's why the Society for Brain Mapping Therapeutics is putting together this a brain park in Los Angeles, because it integrates everything under one roof.
Yeah, I'm surprised that people's hearing changes a lot. I can understand the peripheral, the seeing component, but it's amazing that their hearing changes.
Yeah. Even Marcus Welby, there's an you might be old enough to know Marcus Welby, the TV show, but some of your younger listeners won't. He was the friendly version of the Dr. House. And in 1969, when the Society for Neuroscience became a society, there was an episode of Marcus Welby and where somebody came up to him and said, "Thanks, Dr. Welby, for telling me that I should get new glasses to help my digestion problems. Ever since I got new glasses, my digestion's been great." And that's 50 years ago, 55 years ago. And Marcus Welby, the TV show, knew that digestion and eyes were very much connected. But, 55 years later, optometrists aren't doing that yet, even though there's now research documenting it. There's something called the retinal axis. It's there.
How could seeing differently affect your digestion? Why would that happen?
It wouldn't be seeing differently. It's for all these what they call non-image forming fibers. As I said earlier, the optic nerve goes to a lot of different places, and only one place is eyesight. There's many, many, many other places that the optic nerve goes to. So when you stimulate the retina, all those other places have an effect. Like you're familiar with jet lag, and if you're jet lagged and sleepy, you go outside, you have natural sunlight because the circadian rhythm, that's one of the non-image forming places. That the light comes on your retina, but it puts you to sleep, but your melatonin is produced when it's dark. If you go out to a camping ground, and your brain will entrain to the dusk and the dawn. So if you were out camping for a week or two, your body is going to start to get sleepy when it gets dark, and it's going to start to wake up when it gets light, because the light is stimulating your retina, and those signals are going to non-image forming places, separate from eyesight.
So is there a master map of the retina that shows, where if light falls on it of a certain wavelength, how it's going to affect something in the body?
Somewhat, kind of. So the answer is yes, but it's in different locations. So I've put some of that together, and it's in a publication coming out in Nano Neuroscience. There's a new textbook that'll be out later this year.
How complicated is the map of the retina from what you've observed so far?
Very complicated because it involves so many different things. And it's not just from the outside. When your patients come in with chemicals in their bloodstream, so you get patients who are on medications now, that, somebody comes in on ADD medication or on antidepressants or on blood pressure medicine, and each one of the medications has visual side effects. So, people know it. It's like A leads to B, but people don't realize B leads to C. Every medication has a visual side effect. Some have double vision, some have blurry vision. Some medications have sleepiness. But if you're coming in on several medications, your pupils might not function the same. Your eye muscles might not point the same. Your brain might be calmed down, so you're not scanning the same way. So there's even more complexity. So the bottom line is it's very complex. That's why it takes a whole year to be certified in the 5 different levels here.
Yeah, that's crazy. What's like a short list of all the things you've seen, the right retinal focusing can do for somebody? So headaches, attention, what else?
Well, that ranges the gamut. Sleep disorders, everything, pretty much a lot of different things. We have a lot of one-offs, thyroid problems. We have about somewhere around 5-ish patients whose thyroids have normalized, where their thyroids were off, and then nothing in their life changed except the glasses, and then they were normal. We've had blood glucose that has normalized with a couple of patients. So there's the one-offs. Thinking skills are clearer. So that's where, again, if you look at the success stories, we have many of them, scores of them on our website, but they range the gamut from internal body things like digestion through the retina-gut axis, or thinking skills, or even more confidence. If you perceive the world around you and you can anticipate what's happening because you can scan better, you become more confident. So you'll have children who parents will report have different personalities, that they come back more self-assured, and that's nicer.
That's crazy. It sounds like a whole world of modulation is possible with the right glasses.
You use the correct word. There's something called retinal neuromodulation, where we're using the retina to modulate the nervous system. That's exactly the word. And if you look up retinal neuromodulation, you'll see that the research on it is only in the last handful of years.
Are you able to image the eye so you can tell where light has preferentially been hitting the retina? Can you tell if areas are over or underexposed over time?
Yes, you can. We use something called a retinoscope. So most of the eye doctors are using, actually all of the eye doctors learn how to use a retinoscope, but we learn how to do it for the central eyesight. So we learn how to use it to find what glasses will make the central eyesight sharpest, what will bend the light so that the light strikes the center of the eye and sees clearly. And what we do is we use retinoscopy to look at the edges of the eye. And we do exactly what you're saying. The top of the retina and the bottom of the retina are completely different from each other. And the nasal side and the temporal side toward your nose and toward your ear are very different from each other. So if we find a weak spot, or what I call it is if your brain is kind of sleeping as opposed to there's a party going on in your brain, then we can provide glasses that will wake up the sleepy spots or calm down the active spots, depending on the person.
Is there a protocol, let's say, in addition to the glasses, that you have someone sit and you raster through certain frequencies and certain spots on their eye, like you project onto their eyes the right combination of colors, intensities and all that to start to wake them up generally or rehabilitate their retinas without having them to, only depend on the glasses?
Yeah, well, we usually do that in treatment. We have several hours of evaluation up front because we're doing a lot of different types of visual skill testing. We do external visual skills like aiming and focusing and fixating and following, but then we do internal visual skills like visualization and spatial organization. And then if we find something like you said that's needed, we would send somebody home to do that and then follow them up on Zoom.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. I get called crazy every day, but they say
not in a bad way. Like crazy amazing is what I mean.
Now, one of my patients said that I'm weird in a smart, nerdy way as opposed to in a California way.
That's funny. Or in an Austin, Texas way. They always claim they're weird here too. Interesting. All right. Well, how can people, again, get in touch with you? Where can they go to find out about, possibly working with you?
Well, the easiest way would be to go to mindeye.com, which is our website. If they want an email for information, they could do info@mindeye.com. If they prefer the phone, our phone number is 847-501-2020, because it's easy to remember May Day 2020. That's the 501, like May Day 2020.
Okay. Actually, just a couple more questions that came to my mind's eye. Just a joke. Can you do anything if someone has cataracts or macular degeneration or a diabetic retinopathy? Is there any way to rejuvenate the eye or the retina using any of these techniques or glasses?
Well, you're talking about structures, and I'm talking about functions. So they're different. The example I use all the time is a car mechanic. So you're saying if I come to you with a car that has the tire rims bent and, some of the seating with slashes in it, can you fix it? And the answer is no, I can't fix the structures that are damaged. However, I'm like the driving instructor. So I can tell you how to drive, how to scan the road and coordinate the steering wheel and the gas pedal and the brake differently. So if your brake pedal's not working, there's ways you can lift your foot off the gas instead of putting the brake on, that type of thing. So you're looking at navigating through space. So I work a lot with macular degeneration patients. I directed a clinic for macular degeneration for years, and then I had a course called the Macular Connection for many years. The macula, the seeing clearly, is the very, very slowest pathway. So if you can scan with your periphery quickly enough, you don't even need your macula. When people read, they don't use their macula, they use the peripheral eyesight. And when they drive, they don't use their macula, they use their peripheral eyesight. The only time you use your macula is when you want to see little details, like reading subtitles on a movie, you'd use your macula. But most of the day, you're using your peripheral eyesight, not your macula. So your question was, can I help somebody with diabetic retinopathy or macular degeneration where they can't see clearly? And the answer is yeah, because I can't make them see clearly, but I can sure make them learn to use their periphery a whole lot better than they've been doing it.
But I would suspect that there's probably redundancy in the retinal map. So let's say a part of your retina is damaged either through like diabetic retinopathy or a cataract starting to form. Could you construct a pair of glasses so that other parts of the retina are focused on that would be redundant to the area that was damaged, so to possibly restore some of their function that way?
We would circumvent the area. You would put glasses on often to alleviate, to avoid the bad area so that your brain doesn't get confusing signals. You can't make the bad areas go away, but you can make your brain ignore them.
Interesting. Okay. Well, very good. Yeah, it's been a really interesting call. I think I found, someone that's highly exceptional in this area, meaning you. So I appreciate you coming, and I want to check out your institute, and I encourage listeners, if they're having any of these issues we've discussed, to do the same.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we have a campaign to leave 2020 in the 20th century, and just general people are great, but the people who have any sort of brain problem, whether acquired or lack of development, they just need more testing. And eventually the policymakers are going to set it up so that the insurance companies pay for it. And, I've got another 40 years worth of work in me to do this. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.